Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Small Business USA and our Ask the Expert call. Today, I'm honored to have Peter Susca with OPEX Safety on. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you for having me.
So for those of you that don't know, Small Business USA does this every Tuesday at 10 a.m. We do this for our members because we know that education is a really important part of running a strong, healthy business. And there's some things you're in the heat of the battle, and sometimes there's things that slip through the cracks and that you forget. So we offer an Ask the Expert call every Tuesday to just help educate and have a great place where our members or anybody can come and ask questions of guys like Peter Susca. So please, ask away. We want to challenge Peter with some tough stuff today. I'm looking forward to some great questions. And again, I'm Colleen Ferrary. I'm the president and founder of Small Business USA. And if anybody doesn't know, we have a little philanthropic arm called Generating Winners. So if you have kids, teenagers in particular, visit that site. There's some really cool stuff on there. So Peter, let's get started by sharing a little bit about you and OPEX.
Sure. I've been in the safety and business management realm for over 30 years. And I was just telling Colleen I was in the fire service for 10. So I have a pretty strong emergency response background. But I started my career in the hazmat world, doing hazmat training all over the world. And from there, ended up at United Technologies, worked for United Technologies for 10 years and various levels. My last position was Director of Environment, Health, and Safety for Otis Elevator. I lived in Berlin, Germany. I was responsible for all of Europe. It was a very difficult place from a safety perspective. And from there, went into consulting and been in consulting for the last 16 years, started consulting companies, and in the past 2 years just started this company, Operational Excellence. I call it OPEX Safety, but I focus on organizational improvement through safety.
We are Small Business USA, so we support businesses with under 500 employees. And I know, there's businesses once they get over 50 employees, they're like, we're not small anymore. But we kind of follow that national level. But I want to talk a little bit about those businesses that have anywhere from 1 to 50 employees, because I think there's a big gap here. I think people don't really in this space take safety as seriously as they need to. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of other things to worry about, that are the fire of the moment, if you will. And sometimes we get caught up in firefighting, and if the safety fire doesn't appear to be burning, we don't go and put it up. And I think that's where we end up. We end up fighting fires, being reactive, and unfortunately, until something bad happens, realizing that safety was something that maybe we should have focused on a little bit more.
So let me ask you, since you are a fire chief, are we going to get these fire metaphors all day? No, I'm kidding.
Yes, you are.
You told me. All right.
We won't tell them what you just said before, but that's okay.
Hey, so I'm going to share a story because I think it was one of those aha moments for me. And I was young. God, this happened like 20 years ago, but I've seen it happen 100 times since. And I don't want to encourage anybody out there to duplicate this behavior, but I think it's real. And I think that if you're a small business owner, you really need to think about this. We had, I was running these little boutique stores all over the place. And one of the stores was closing time, and the team had to vacuum, and there was a vacuum cord going across the floor. And one of the customers was in the store and was heard by employees, said, if I trip over this cord, I can sue them, right? And so she proceeded to pretend to trip over this cord. We had witnesses watch the whole thing. It was on camera. It was obviously staged. The two of them looked at it. They planned it out all on video. It was very obviously staged. And they ended up suing the company. And the company's stance on it, and it was a large corporation, the company's stance on it, you're already smirking. But they said, and it was, myself and that team that ran that store were infuriated because the company's stance was it would cost more to fight it than it's worth it.
Right.
And they wrote these people a check for $5,000.
Yep.
I'm like, are you kidding me? This is like we're breeding fraud here.
Yeah.
I mean, could that happen to anybody? I mean, I think about storefronts, restaurant owners, like, golly, right?
Of course it could. Of course it could. And I mean, you know as well as I do, what that goes back to really is the fact that you all knew about the hazard, and they told you about the hazard, right? I mean, you should be telling yourself about the hazard, and you should be doing something about it, because, I mean, really, that is customer satisfaction, isn't it? At that point, if you're really interested in customer satisfaction, customer safety is part of customer satisfaction, and in turn, you've got these few folks out there that can take advantage of the system and will.
We look back at that incident and we said, okay, should the team have automatically at that point stopped vacuuming? Should the employee have pulled the cord, walked up to the guest and said, oh, I'm really sorry, let me unplug this so you can shop? And it would have been a better experience. But instead, I mean, what the employee did was looked at the customer and just shook their head and kept vacuuming, from what we could see. So, do people have fraudulent claims on people that they like? That, I guess that was one of the first things that we came in. If the customer is happy and they really like you and loyal, are they going to create a fraudulent claim?
It's the same thing with employees. Yeah. It really is. And, I deal more in that world, frankly, than I do in the customer world. But it comes down to the environment that you set up and how you make those decisions of how you set up your job, how do you set up your workplace, how you prioritize things. And then, that leadership discipline of making sure that people are doing the right things and are checking these things and having that as a priority. And, when I see fraudulent claims from employees, it comes down to a couple things. One is first the work environment, which, leads people many times to take advantage of things if they're on the line, right? And then you've got the other small percentage of folks that are waiting for opportunities to take advantage of you. And frankly, those folks long before that happens. You go back and look at their HR files, you're going to see it's predictable. It's predictable. Maybe it's not predictable what they're going to use against you, but it's predictable they're going to do something. And that's where the organization needs to be taking action before the outcome.
I agree. I think we've seen it. If a team has, most of my towards the most of my end of my corporate career was these very large teams, like 5,000 people. And you could always see a work center that had poor employee engagement. They had high turnover, had higher incidents of fraud. I mean, it was, or accidents. I mean, it was very, there was no maybe there's some relevance here. It was very, very clear.
Yeah, there's a direct connection between safety and operational health. I mean, that's the business I'm in. I use safety as an indicator of organizational health. It is a tremendous indicator. And, you can always go from safety and find that the issue is bigger than safety. Always. Safety is never an anomaly, ever. And I'm not talking about safety just from a perspective of OSHA recordables and injuries. I'm talking about how you manage safety and the risk that you have.
So, I have a couple interesting statistics that I pulled up. I was just kind of okay, what is really happening out there? And let's kind of keep our small business hat on. You are an expert in these large corporations too. But for today, I want to just say under 100 employees, right? But also let's think about that person who has one employee, because I think there's some relevance there as well. And I think they overlook it. But, the average incident cost an employer $16,000. I don't know if that statistic changed. It's something I pulled up today from employer.com. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think it's probably pretty close.
And then the biggest incidents that happen are falling was 20. Let me see. Falling was 36% of injuries, respiratory 36, and struck by is 27. And those were in particular to death, which was crazy. 11 workers die every day. And I thought, gosh, like trip and falls and struck bys were what we spoke about most often in in that world. So you're an employer. How do you prevent that? How do you, I mean, some of these are legitimate. 2%, the DOL estimated that 2% of claims are fraudulent, right? So let's assume that most of these claims are true, right?
Right.
These are all things like falls, heat, struck bys. These are all avoidable incidents, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you coach an employer to be aware of that when they have all of this other stuff going on? How do they be safe?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a lot of times, look, you can go to the best business schools in the country and you're not going to learn how to manage safety as an integral part of managing a business, because safety really isn't core. It's in that risk category, like ethics, integrity. It's on the outside, and it's a threat. It's looked at as threat to the core of the business. And if you take it inside and you look at it as an indicator of the health of your business, you're going to look at it from the perspective of, how do I make the workplace more efficient and effective? And at the same time, how do I eliminate hazards as part of business improvement, operational improvement? So if we go down to this 10-person workplace that maybe sells appliances, I don't know, and they've got the back warehouse and they got a forklift and they got 3 or 4 employees that work back there, then you need to look at the dynamic of that workplace, and you look at it from an efficiency perspective, you look at it from an operability perspective, how do I get this stuff, get it out efficiently, and you look at it from a safety perspective, all in one shot. Because your opportunity really to eliminate hazards is in setting up the workplace the right way. When it's not set up the right way, then we do these shortcuts. We end up with people climbing up on things and doing things, and that's where these things typically happen. So it's got to be built into your thought process of designing the work. And it's not complicated. It really isn't. It's just got to be part of the paradigm of the way that you make business decisions. And just like that, I mean, I have I'll switch to a large client. I have a very large client who's had forklift incidents, people being hit by forklifts for a lot of years. And I said to them, I don't care how much you train those forklift drivers, and I don't care how much you train the pedestrians. Your inherent problem is you have forklifts and pedestrians operating constantly in the same space. Mm-hmm. You have to change that. You have to make a forklift area and a people area. Because you can't change that by training and behavior change and all that stuff. It just doesn't work. It's inherently set up the wrong way. Right. And if you design it right, it tends to work right, and it's not just work right from safety; it's work right from business efficiency. So that's really the key.
It's funny because I know OSHA goes in, and if you call OSHA, they'll come, is it OSHA or the DOL?
OSHA, yeah.
They'll come to your workplace for free,
yeah.
And you're opening yourself up, but they promise if you call them, right, you won't get a fine.
Well, it's state in Connecticut. It's state OSHA. State OSHA is the consultancy group. You call them, they'll come and help you, but they'll basically say to you, you have to do these things. If we're going to tell you this stuff, you have to do this, because then, if you don't do them, then you're going to be cited.
And they do come back and follow up, which I mean, so there's some value in that. The other piece, though, is it's not just that, what I've learned is that you can have OSHA come in and give you this list of things that need to be done, but maybe one might be a sign, or one might be a lock on a compactor, or that, I want to call it a high-low, but whatever that thing is.
Raymond lift. Right.
So, I mean, it might be like a sign, but guess what? The minute somebody gets on that truck, gets on that forklift and takes that sign down so they could get in, you're relying on one person to go put that sign back up. So that culture is what you're driving, and the task list that OSHA is giving you, they're two different things, right?
Yeah. That's where the education comes in. You sit down with your employees. First thing you want to do is establish a value for safety in your organization, and not just a speaking value, but a walking value. You know what I'm saying? It's the way you make decisions from leadership. Really sets up the way people make their decisions. You're the leader, okay? And so you have to set that parameter. And then you get them involved in setting up the workplace, making it safer and more efficient, and you have them buy into those solutions. That is the best way to do this. Not somebody goes in their office, comes out with some nice signs and procedures and hands them to the employees. That works temporarily, possibly, but that's not sustainable. It's just not, because they're in a conflict many times. At the end of the month, we got to get this out the door, and okay, you gave me this safety procedure. Now I have to make a decision. You don't want people in that decision-making mode. You don't.
One thing I've always shared with teams is that you have to make safety personal. 1 in 6 incidents right now are life-changing, right? This is nothing to joke around with, 1 in 6. Yeah. And, I'm going to share a story and put myself out there because I know what your response is going to be, but it's a really great example. Years ago, I had this young man. He was great employee, went 1,000 miles an hour. All he wanted to do was deliver at every single level for us. And it's funny because there's somebody working right outside my office door right now. And I'm like waiting. I have the dog under the table. I'm just waiting for her to just lose her mind on this person. So I apologize if I'm distracted. So, but he's a great employee. This kid would move mountains for you if he could.
Yeah.
Well, one night in the middle of the night, I get this phone call, and this young man was hurrying and rushing, and he was stepping from a ladder to the top of some racking, and he fell 20 feet straight down head first onto a concrete floor. And I got up and I ran. It was up in one of my stores in Northern Connecticut, and I ran up there and I went to the hospital, and I sat by his bedside with his family and his fiance and his peers, and we didn't know if he was going to live or not. And it was probably one of the most painful incidents. Like, this young man with the best of intentions, here he falls off the top of this racking because he wasn't being safe. I mean, it was completely his fault. And I'm there with his family who doesn't know if he's going to survive, if he's going to be a vegetable, if he'll ever walk again. I mean, it's amazing he did survive it. But I'll tell you, it was at that moment, me as a leader, I realized that I've watched this kid fly up that ladder 100 times the wrong way.
Right.
I never put the brakes on, never put safety in front of productivity. Those little tiny nuances that would have proven the point that safety was more important than getting the job done, I never did. Yeah. And so when I looked at his here's this like really great, strong, physical young kid, right? Early 20s, laying like a vegetable in a hospital bed. And I was completely responsible for it in my mind. But, I know that you're going to throw out so many other challenges that we as business owners need to think about with that story.
I do fatality prevention in high hazard industry, steel industry and the like. And I hate to tell you how many fatalities I've seen. And how many times I've heard that story from line management. And you go as a line manager, as a leader of a company, and are exposed to a fatality, it's a life-changing experience for you as a leader. And those folks who have had those experiences have a different perspective of safety. Like I said before, you can go to the best colleges in the world, but you can't learn that at college. And
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was waiting for you to beat me up on this productivity issue because, right, he shouldn't have been rushing anyway, well, right?
You know what? I did. You familiar with RGIS? They do the
Regis
survey. Yeah, and I did a presentation for them at their national conference this year. They wanted to kick safety up a notch, and they had me present to 300 leaders there, and I showed this picture of this guy climbing up a ladder on a fence to try to get over a fence. And I told the story. I said, this happened at one of your job sites where somebody was supposed to go in and do an inventory inside this warehouse, but nobody gave him the key. So this individual decided to climb up found this ladder, climbed up this ladder, jumped over the fence to try to get in there. I said, who is this individual to you? I said, it's your hero. Right? This is the guy who saves the job from failing. Right. And this is the person that you pat on the back every single time he or she does it, right? I said, but are you patting him on the back for all of your values or just one or two right now?
So true. I got goosebumps as you said that.
Yeah.
You know,
But that's what you've been doing, right? You've been reinforcing that behavior in the past. That's why that person does it. He's not doing it to get hurt. He's doing it for the good of the company.
Yes, it is. And you're absolutely right. You know, I do believe when it comes to safety, if you have one employee or 100, they have to know these stories. I had one incident where in one of my stores, somebody had taken a television off the top shelf and they didn't balance the forklift inside the pallet straight. And as soon as they pulled it off the racking, it was an unbalanced pallet and the TV flipped over and struck a vendor down the back. And it's amazing that this person lived. It was a huge TV. Another incident, and I always say, it's not the immediate danger that gets us in trouble. It's the future danger and the risk that we walk by that really sets us apart, and there's a horrible story about, and we know this parent. I mean, this parent just makes us cringe. They let their kids run all over the place and climb on everything. But it was at a Walmart store, and this 2-year-old was climbing on racking, and those big ready to assemble furniture units. Well, he was climbing up on it, and it fell backwards. It wasn't hooked in right, and it didn't have a safety bar on it, and it fell backwards, and it killed this little 2-year-old child, right? How would you feel to be the person who put that piece of furniture there and didn't replace that safety bracket? All these things that we do to prevent, whether it's spills or whatever it is, if our employees don't connect that spill on the floor with an old woman walking into your store, falling on her back and breaking her hip, we'll never move past creating these environments that are filled with risk and filled with danger for not only your customers, but also for your pocketbook, right? For your workers' comp insurance.
Yeah, and that's the leadership challenge, if you will, is get people to do things because they are trying to change the end game versus trying to just comply with you, right? Here's the procedure. This is what we need to do. They don't know why they do it, but they do it to make you happy. And they really need to be doing it for value, and that value is the value that you're talking about, which is the prevention of the outcome. But if you've never seen that kind of stuff in your life, it's hard to really appreciate it. I do a lot of leadership training for executives and mid-level managers, where I put them in the room and I ask them some tough questions, and out come these stories of personal stories, and the people with the personal stories are the people on the side of being good leaders of safety because they've experienced it just like you have. So the challenge is getting people to respect something they haven't experienced, right? That's the challenge, and that's a leadership challenge. I mean, one of the questions I ask people all the time is, "Where's your next injury going to be?" Okay. Yeah. And it's a really thoughtful question to ask. You should ask, the folks out there, ask your supervisors that question. Ask your employees that question. Ask them separately and see if you get the same answer.
Yeah. So true.
And because it's a thoughtful question.
I think so. I agree with you, Peter. And I think it's about visualizing it. Just took this great memory training course, with Carl Messina. And it was so much fun. I mean, 4 hours went by in a minute. But the biggest takeaway that I took is that we're not going to remember. That impact is never going to be made until we can visualize what these things mean to us. And so I have a very vivid story. To your point, I have a very vivid picture of what not being safe means to me. And I try to share that picture because I think even if it's not your own picture, you can share that picture and and do that. I love this question from Matt, so we'll ask that in a minute. But I think it's helping visualize to your employees that to see beyond the spill, to see beyond doing something quickly and the wrong way. So it's really fascinating to me. So Matt Montessori said that question is really hard to ask in Taiwan. They think if they imagine it happening, it will make it happen. It's funny. I totally have heard that as well. That's interesting. So don't visualize accidents, visualize safe spaces.
Yeah, no, I've done training all over the world. I've been all over the world, and I will tell you something about the Asian countries is that once they are eager to learn and they're eager to do things. So if you can get in there and you can give them something that is of value to them, they'll take it and do it overnight. Versus the U.S., North America, which will, there'll be a big long debate and it'll be a sell job and all that. But in Asia, once they get it and they see it a value, they do it overnight. It's an amazing thing to watch. But yeah, there are a lot of cultural challenges that come along with safety. There really are. I mean, one of the things I used to have to fight with is the value for human life. There are countries out there where they can just take that body and move it out and get another one right off the street and put them in that place, and they don't think a thing about it. Now, that's not the United States, but you have to be culturally conscious of how that organization or that company respects human life.
It's funny. You can even say that just within the walls of the boundaries of the United States, we have so many different cultures in here. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I would say down south under the Mason-Dixon line, you tell them to flip over every car in a parking lot and they'll just go and do it. It may take them all day to do it, but they're going to flip every car over in the parking lot. You ask that same thing in Connecticut, and they're going to be like, are you kidding me? I need to know why. You need to give me a really good to motivate me. And am I going to get paid extra for half the pay? It's very different culturally.
And that goes to a leader's knowledge of their organization, right? And it's not one organization ever. Usually, there's different people with different perspectives, and you said it before, and I say it all the time. Safety is personal. It doesn't get much more personal than safety. It really doesn't. And I'm going to
shift gears a little bit here on it, because I want to talk about something that has been on people's minds. It's been on the news. I just keep hearing about it, and it makes for great blooper reels. But it's distracted walking. So I'll pull up I have a couple statistics I'll share with you. And I went how do you combat this in the workforce? It's hysterical. So there's over 15,000 incidents last year due to distracted walking. Yeah. It's the 5th leading cause of death in children under the age of 19. So distracted walking, I mean, most of it is cell phone related, but here's the statistics. 33% is just talking to other people. Me walking next to you and walking into, talking to you on the side of me and then walking into a pole, apparently, which I've done. I mean, I've been busy chit-chatting and almost stepped in something or whatever. That means I'm just great with eye contact, right? 26% because of headphones.
Yeah.
15% because of texting. 13% talking on the phone. And 6% because of multitasking, which apparently we are terrible multitaskers. Just stop. But it's all over the news. You see people walking into fountains while they're texting. Yeah. Scott Gumbar said 78% is because of Snapchat for him.
But you can see what we've set up in society today, which is this juggling. Right. And we can juggle everything, and we're throwing so much at people, so much information, so many things that people think they can juggle. And you just said it. They can't. You can't do more than one thing really well at a time. You can't. And I think we're setting people up to fail as communicators, fail as attention, whatever it is. If you're not focused on what you're doing, like if I was looking at my phone while I was trying to talk to you, right? If you're not focused on what you're doing at the time, you're not fully engaged in the environment, the issue, whatever it is. And you're probably not going to do well with it.
Well, let's look at customer service. I mean, just the whole customer service end of that.
That's a great.
I look at some of the members that I know, and I'm getting texts like crazy from members who are watching live stream. It's fun. But one person said, I'm firing all my employees now and hiring all 1099s. So, but
it's a really. I have younger children. I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, and one of the things I reinforce with them every time they talk to me is look at me while you're talking to me.
Right.
Okay? Look at me. They're so distracted by looking at their phones and doing other things. They haven't even learned to focus on the person that they're talking to. And that's a really important piece. If you start with that, focus on what's in front of you.
So true. Well, let's look at it from a customer service perspective. You own a store. There's all, what do you have going on in a store? You have customers coming in. Is it fair to say just ban the cell phone? I mean, I would be so pleased if I walked into my little, market or wherever, and all of a sudden people weren't distracted with their phone and they were focused on me. That alone would increase sales, I think. But is it okay to do that? I mean, is that a conversation that you can have in this environment?
I think it's a conversation you need to have with your employees about what the priorities are of operating the business, what the priorities are for them, and how to manage both of those things. It's a conversation that needs buy-in. It's a conversation that is had in the safety field in a lot of companies where, do you let your employees talk on the phone or have their phone with them when they're driving or all that stuff? You really need to think about it from a mistake-proofing perspective, which is put the phone in the trunk.
Right.
Okay. There's no way you're going to look at it while you're driving. It's impossible. Okay. And if you really need to talk on your phone, pull over and you're going to have to get it out of the trunk. Because if you're not going to have the fortitude to be able to not look at that phone when it rings, put it in the trunk.
I love what Matt had said. He saw a great sign in a coffee shop, and more coffee shops are doing this. No Wi-Fi. So no Wi-Fi. Talk to each other like it's 1999. So awesome. That is a great sign.
I have to believe the society is going to have to go back to relearning those things sooner or later. It's just not, and it starts at the family level. It really does. Everything that we see in society starts right at home.
Right. So true. So true. I mean, it's what we talk about that on Generating Winners all the time. It's this, we have all these experts together, psychologists and therapists and professors and teachers. And one of the biggest conversations that comes up all the time is, how much different would the family dynamic be? How many less issues would we have if we could just eliminate the electronics, when we're sitting at the table or after school, or, you see it all the time. You go out for dinner and families are, I've done it with friends of mine. We go out with our kids. We're so excited. We get to talk. And then we look across the table and the 4 kids are all on their phone. And I'm horrible because I'm like, phones away, no electronics. Like, you talk, I think kids need to know how to do that.
I'll tell you, the best time we had at my house was when we had that October storm. Was it 3 or 4 years ago? And we lost power for 5 days. It was a beautiful thing at my house because there were no electronics, no distractions. We actually played guessing games and we engaged with each other. I said, I'm going to do this every week, and I'm just going to shut the power off to the house. It was great. It was great.
Scott Gumbar said, no phones at the dinner table at the Gumbar family. And it's so funny because I'm very strict like that. I don't want any distraction, no TV in the other room, no phones. Yeah. But, my mom has been in the hospital the last couple of weeks, in and out of ICU. It's been kind of, so I'll sit with my phone next to me at the table just in case. I mean, it's been very hit or miss the last couple of weeks. And my daughter looks at me and she said, Mom, anything can wait. And like, part of me is like, okay, great. Yeah. We're teaching good standards, but should there be an exception? Shouldn't there be an exception? But I think we do have to teach that you have to be present at work and at home. Yeah. Matt, thanks for joining us. I know Matt has to run, and thanks for being part of the chat. And I love that you brought in the other cultural element, because I think that's a challenge that you face, I'm sure, with some of these larger businesses.
Yes.
Cool. Are there any questions for Peter? Because I could talk about stuff all day long, and I kind of we probably should start thinking about wrapping up. But any questions for Peter from anyone? I do have one from a member that was texted in, Peter, and her question was, how do you protect yourself as a small business owner? And that's it. I know it's pretty wide open there, but
Yeah.
probably a great question to end on.
Well, I think one, you have to know what the right thing is to do, and then you have to try to do the right thing. And I know that sounds pretty big, but at least from a safety perspective, you have to understand your safety risk, and you have to engage your employees, and you have to have a process by which you intend to do the right thing. You're not going to be perfect at it, but it's intent matters. It does. And having a plan and having things prioritized and working with your folks to keep that on the front line, whether it's the extension cords or blocking exits or whatever it is,
Right.
and that you go and check. The things you check matter to people. Okay? As a leader, there's a lot of things that people have to juggle, but the things you check and the things you reinforce become top on their list. Okay, so go out there and set that example.
So true. If I could just offer one thing, and I'm sorry to kind of at the end here, just throw it in here. One thing that was a huge learning experience for me was it has to be part of your routine. So whatever you're checking, make it part of your routine. But also, if you don't talk about it, it's like in many corporations, they start with a huddle. I'm sure that you enforce that huddle as well when you're in big businesses. And the huddle itself doesn't change safety. It's because the leaders are talking about it and reminding you every day. And it's not like if you stretch, it's going to make you safer and not pull that muscle and miss
Right.
work. But it's what you're saying. It's about making sure that you follow up and you tell people every day how important safety is to them.
Well, safety is about decision making.
Right.
It really is. There's a lot of things that go into making a good decision. Safety is one of them. And you have to teach people how to do that, and you have to reinforce it by doing it at your level. Right. So if they see you putting safety as a priority in your business decisions, they're more likely to put safety as a priority in their day-to-day decisions.
Great comment.
They're watching you.
True.
They're watching you all the time. And they're watching not just your mouth, they're watching your feet.
True.
Okay.
True.
They're watching what you do.
Great.
And especially at tough times. So that end of the month, when we're in a rush, that's the place where you want to do the right thing.
Right.
That really sets the tone.
Awesome, Peter. Peter, tell everyone how to get a hold of you. How can they reach you?
You can reach me at OPX safety at cox.net. I'm also on LinkedIn. Any questions, feel free to email me on my email address. I'd be glad to help you out. I do this because I value people. I value safety. I'm in this business because I couldn't be in anything else other than this. So thank you for your time today, and thank you for valuing safety yourself. I appreciate it.
And you do it so well, Peter. I mean, your reputation precedes you. So I'm so honored to have you on the call today. Thank you. And again, I'm Colleen Ferrary with Small Business USA. If you ever want to be a guest on our call or learn more about Small Business USA, please email info@smallbusinessus.com, or you can find me at Colleen@smallbusinessus.com. Peter Susca, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a great day, and everyone be safe.